did. Well, good morning again, everyone. How are we today? Cold? Are you cold? Who's cold? Anybody cold in here? I feel pretty snuggly up here. Are you cold, really? You want me to? No? Okay. If Jennifer says it's fine, it's fine. That's my rule. That's the way I go by there. All right, good morning. I want to welcome all of you who are following us on Facebook today, YouTube, our webpage, however you found us. God bless you. God bless you. I also want to say to all of our veterans, this is Veterans Weekend. And so any of you who have ever served, man, thank you, thank you, thank you. How many people in here has been in the armed forces? Yeah, thank you. I hear Teddy's stories at least on Tuesdays, about every Tuesday. Since I got my new office done, he loves to come and just sit and tell me all the stories, and I love hearing them. But I've heard them a lot. I've heard them a lot, but there's some big stories. All right, open your Bibles to Psalm 27. Psalm 27. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about anxiety because they go hand in hand. Where there's one, there's always the other. It's kind of like smoke and fire, is it not? Fear and anxiety. And okay. And we're going to look at Psalm 27, a psalm that David wrote. Before we do that, let me ask you, how many of you have ever seen, either in person or on television, a trapeze act? I'm not sure if you call it trapeze or acrobat. I think today they have a new term for it, aerialist or something like that. But how many of you have ever seen that in person? Yeah, it's kind of tense, right? Because you're just kind of scared for them. If you've never seen it, let me give you kind of a crude description, and I'm going to use masculine terms here, so, feminists don't get upset or anything. I'm just using this for descriptive purposes, okay? So, you have this one guy, and he's swinging on a rod or a stick, and attached to the rod or stick is ropes or cables, and he is swinging by his legs, okay? This guy is called the catcher. Why do you think he's called the catcher? It's his job to catch. Boy, you guys are on it this morning. Opposite of the catcher is the flyer. Okay, he's doing the exact same thing, but he's holding on by his hands and arms, okay? And so the reason he's called the flyer is because at one point in time, he has to let go of the rod and fly through the air, and hopefully the catcher does what? Catches him. So who do you think's the most important? The catcher? Okay. I figured you'd say that, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I've done some research on this. Seriously. I know you think that's nerdy, but I've done some research on this. The flyer, I believe, is in the most precarious situation. Wouldn't you agree? Because the flyer, he has to let go of the rod at just the right time, and he flies through the air. And according to my research, what he has to do is arch his back, reach out, and then stay very, very, very still. Okay? Very still. He can't try to catch the catcher. Because to me, I would be swimming up there going, come on, right? Yeah. But the flyer can't do that. The flyer has to let go, stretch out, and wait, and trust that the catcher is going to do what? Can you imagine that? I mean, the catcher, he's secure, right? But the flyer, man, I'm telling you, that's got to be a crazy feeling, right? How many of you have ever felt that way? Seriously, have felt like that you're just kind of flying, that life has done something? Life will do stuff, won't it? It really will. Life will throw you a curveball and hit you upside the head, and oftentimes it just kind of feels like you're floating, and you're not sure if you're going to fall, right? There's a whole lot of what ifs. When you're a flyer. David wrote this psalm. In most of his life, he kind of felt that way. Now, later on in David's life, things got pretty secure for him. He was sitting up in his palace, drinking wine and doing all that stuff. But most of David's life, he felt like the flyer. He wasn't sure from one minute to the next if he was going to live or die. And what's interesting, in David's life, the closest he had ever been to God was during these times. You know what I mean? I mean, when he didn't know whether he was going to live or die, when he was just didn't feel secure whatsoever, when there were a lot of what ifs, that's when David was so close to God, and he wrote this psalm in the midst of feeling that way. So let's read Psalm 27. There's just 14 verses. Are you going to put them up on the screen today? Okay. You're awesome too, Susan. All right. New Living Translation says this, but you read in whatever translation you want to. David says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. So why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident." Now listen to this. "The one thing I asked of the Lord, the thing that I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. For he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. At his sanctuary I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising the Lord with music. Hear me as I pray, O Lord. Be merciful and answer me. My heart has heard you say, 'Come and talk with me.' And my heart responds, 'Lord, I am coming.' Do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger. You have always been my helper. Don't leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Teach me how to live, O Lord. Lead me along the right path, for my enemies are waiting for me. Do not let me fall into their hands, for they accuse me of things I've never done. Yet I am confident I will see the Lord's goodness while I am here in the land of the living." Verse 14. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. There is one command in the Bible that repeats itself over and over again. There are a lot of commands in the Bible that do that, but this one is the most repeated. What is it? Anybody know? Wait, okay. Close. Trust, close. Fear not. Fear not. Those other ones are up there, but fear not. Don't be afraid is the most repeated command in the Bible. Now, why is that? Why does God have to keep saying for us to not be afraid? Why? Because we're afraid, right? That's exactly why. I mean, there's no big spiritual answer to that. It's because we're afraid, and God knows that, but we don't act afraid, do we? Seriously. Well, I mean, we don't. We're not scaredy cats, right? We don't act afraid, especially men, right? Bob, we don't act afraid, do we? I mean, we really don't. I mean, I'm a man. I try to be a man's man. You know what that is? I have no idea what that is. But we try to be man's man, and that's what I'm a husband. It's my job to protect Jennifer. So if an axe murderer comes to the door, it's my job to go all John Wick on them, right? Who knows John Wick? Okay, a few of you. For you others, okay, Charles Bronson maybe? John Wayne? Okay, all right. But that's my job, to go and do that, or at least die first. I mean, that's my job, right? We don't act scared, do we? We really don't. And around here, for those of you who know, I like to have fun with fear, don't I? I mean, I like to scare people. Have you noticed that? I mean, I really do. I think that's one of my spiritual gifts. I mean, I scared Susie Broom so much one time, I think she peed on herself. I mean, it's funny. She go, ah, right? In fact, I'm afraid I'm going to scare one of you older people, and you're going to fall down and have a heart attack and die. Now, that's going to be awkward. Don't you think? I mean, at the funeral, someone's going to say, what happened? Well, Pastor Don, right? Yeah. But, fear can be fun. It really can. So let me ask you, what are you afraid of? Fear can be fun until it's not. That's a better way to put it. So let me ask you, what are you afraid of? Come on, somebody tell me. Huh? Spiders. Okay. Mice, yeah, I know that. I mean, we can have one mouse, and she wants me to put out 100 mouse traps. What else? What are you afraid of? Huh? Hiking? Heights. Oh, okay. Heights. Who else? Snakes? Okay, now we're getting deep. That's kind of where I was heading. Huh? Failure. Man, we're getting real deep, aren't we? Yeah. Anybody else? Disapproval of others? Wow. You need some therapy? No. But, yeah. Did you know that there are over 100 phobias? Not 100, 400 phobias. What's a phobia? Fear of something, right? Yeah. A fear of something. There are a lot more than that, but there are over 400 that are diagnosed and treated. 400, just in America, right? Either by therapy or appeal. Of course, there's appeal for anything, right? But I wrote some of them down because I thought they were kind of funny. I'm not going to pronounce these right, but I'm going to act like I'm going to, and you won't know the difference. Trypanophobia. Trypanophobia. Who knows what that is? Fear of needles. I knew you was going to say that. How many are you afraid of needles? Yeah. Listen, I've built houses with broken bones, with pain just shooting out different parts of my body, and I've done that. But man, I go to the doctor and they break out a little needle. I mean, that freaks me out. I mean, it really does. And Jennifer, she thinks this is funny, but I don't think it's funny at all. I mean, when they put the Band-Aid on your tushy, guess what? That's going to fall off on its own. I'm not pulling that off, right? Like 2 or 3 months later, Jennifer said, you still got that Band-Aid on you or whatever? But needles, right? They freak some people out. How about orgophobia? Now, a lot of people have this one. That's a fear of work. Seriously. That's a diagnosed and treatable phobia. I mean, what I want to know is if you're an employer and one of your employees, comes and gives you a note from the doctor that says, yeah, I got a fear of work. I mean, what do you do with that, right? Yeah. Scopophobia. This one's funny. That's the fear of being stared at. Yeah, what are you looking at, right? I mean, seriously, that's the fear of being stared at. And some of you might, no, we won't go there. How about peladophobia? That's a fear of bald men. Seriously, I'm glad Jennifer doesn't have that. Well, you probably Angie too, right? You're glad that Angie did. Yeah. Agoraphobia, that's the fear of clowns. Yeah, clowns freak me out. Anybody who's seen the movie It? Yeah, that was scary until the very end, and it was kind of a letdown at the very end because all it was a big spider. But anyway, you probably hadn't seen the old one. You've probably seen the new one, right? Okay. Last one, Alethiophobia. That's the fear of church. A lot of people got that one, right? A lot of people got that one. But fear can be funny. I mean, it really can until it's not. I mean, how many of you like scary movies? Anybody like scary movies? One, two, not too many, yeah, a few of you, right? I like scary movies too. Jennifer could tell you that. But the scary movies I like are the ones that seem like they could happen. You know what I mean? Because there are some of them, it's like, no, that's not going to happen. But like The Exorcist, you remember the one that came out in the 70s? That was scary, wasn't it? Because we know what demons can do. We've read the Bible. When, when a man brought his son to Jesus who was possessed by a demon, he fell down on the ground scratching and foaming at the mouth. And it's just like the girl on The Exorcist. Her head spun around and she spit up pea soup all over the priest. I mean, that is scary, right? And there's actually been studies that have been done on fear. Fear of watching movies, and it goes like this. When you know that you're not in any danger, it's an adrenaline rush. Does that make sense? When you know that there may be axe murderers out there, but when you know that you're not in any danger whatsoever, when you watch a scary movie, for some people, there's such an adrenaline rush. And so the whole thing is about security, right? It really is. It's about security, knowing that you're going to be safe. And even when you lose something, like when the tornadoes came through Bowling Green, right? I mean, it hit several parts of Bowling Green, but it hit our neighborhood. I mean, the tornado came about 300 feet from our house and didn't touch our house, but all of our neighbors, at least 5 or 10 neighbors, destroyed their homes. And so Jennifer and I slept through that. We got up, looked out the window, it's like, what? What happened? And we went and talked to our neighbors, and they were crushed. But here's what they said. They said, at least we're safe, right? And so you can get over stuff like that, losing possessions, when you know that you're safe. But what about when you don't know? You know what I mean? What about when you don't know? All of those what ifs. The COVID pandemic was bad, right? I mean, really, really bad. So many people lost their lives, and people are still now getting COVID too. But it was bad. And when I say but, I don't want to minimize all the people who lost their lives, but we're now just finding out a lot of the effects of COVID, right? You know what I mean? And one of the biggest effects is people are scared. I've read a lot of articles here in the last year to where our young people, from ages like 10 on up through 18 or 19 years old, they're stressed out. Did you know that? And I said, well, I've read several books on that, and for me and for us older people, it's like, what do you got to be stressed out about? But they're scared. I mean, they really are. And not just young people, but what the pandemic has done, it has shown people that anything can happen, right? I mean, it really has. And there are a lot of questions that has arisen from the pandemic. Questions like, am I safe, right? Can I do the things that I want to do? Those questions. But I need you to understand, at the bottom of those questions, am I safe? Can I do what I want to do? You got to understand, those are spiritual questions, aren't they? Would you agree with that? I mean, everything's spiritual for Christians, right? But at the bottom of those questions, they're spiritual questions, and at the bottom of those questions are really two big questions. Can God be trusted? And is he here to help me? Are you tracking with me? Can God be trusted, and is he here for me? Again, I don't want to get, I'm not getting into, I just mentioned COVID, and I don't want to get into the politics and all that stuff, and I don't want to talk about precautions and being smart. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, do you feel safe? Or do you feel like you're just flying out there hoping that someone will catch you? You see, in Psalm 27, David wrote this song, and he was constantly being hounded by Saul. How many of you know David's story? Yeah, David's my favorite character in the Bible other than Jesus, because I can identify with David. And I think most of us can, because David was a very, very flawed man, wasn't he? I mean, he really was. And I use David a lot when people come to me and say they've gone too far. You know what I mean? You know, there's a lot of people over the years that's come to me and said, Pastor, I've sinned too much for God. I always use David. I always say, okay, have you killed anybody? You know, no. And if it's a man, I say, well, have you got another man's wife pregnant and then had her husband killed? And as a result, the baby died? Have you done any of that? And it's like, no, that's terrible. And I said, there's a man in the Bible called David, and God calls him a man after his own heart, right? So, you know, let's just get rid of that notion that you could sin too much for God. But David, he was constantly being hounded by Saul. And he just felt like he was just flying, right? He didn't know from one minute to the next if he was going to fall or not. But I want you to notice what he says in verses 3 and 4. Let me read to you again. It says, though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I'm attacked, that's that even if again, right? Even if I'm attacked, I will remain confident. The one thing I asked of the Lord, the one thing that I seek the most is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. When David said that last part there, I want to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, he's not saying, I just want to stay at the temple, okay? Or we would say today, I just want to live in the church. He's not saying that. What he's saying is, I constantly want to be near God, because the temple represented the presence of God, right? But I like what he says there, even if I'm in danger. And he says, the one thing that I seek the most. How many of you remember that old cartoon where there was a genie kind of flying on a mat? You remember that? I think it was back in the 70s. Anybody remember that? Yeah, he would go around giving people wishes, right? And so, you know, you rub the bottle, he pops out, and he says, I'm going to grant you what? 3 wishes. Yeah. Have you ever thought about what you might wish for? Seriously. Don't? Yeah, I have too. And I've kind of gotten away around just the 3 part. Yeah, because I said, okay, I'm going to ask for another wish. Do what? That's right. Good minds think alike, right? But I want you to think about this. David's surrounded. He's the flyer. He's flying out. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die. And if he had one wish, what do you think it would be? I mean, it tells us right here. For me, I would say, get rid of this what? Who's hounded him? Saul. David's hid up in a cave. I mean, this is year after year after year. So if I had one wish, it would be, God, wipe out this army. Right? Wipe it out. But David says, no, the one thing that I seek the most is what? To be in the presence of God. Isn't that amazing? To be in the presence of the Lord. Listen, I'm not going to tell you that even if you love Jesus and follow Jesus, things are going to go great for you. I'm not going to tell you that even if you follow Jesus, you're not going to get sick or you're not going to lose loved ones. I can't tell you that because we all know. We all know, right? We all know. But what I can tell you is if you follow Jesus, you see David, he wanted to stay in the presence of the Lord. That's what he wanted. He wanted to be as close to God as he possibly could. And if we will just do that, none of these bad things are going to go away. But he will catch you. He will catch you. There was a man named Karl Wallenda. Any of you ever heard of him? Who is it? Yeah, greatest tightrope walker in the world. Okay? Yeah, Karl Wallenda. He did crazy stuff. There came a time in his life where he started thinking about something that he never thought about. What was it? What if I fall? That's exactly it. He started thinking about that. What if I fall? He never thought about that before. His last act was he was, like Marcia said, I think he was walking between two hotels, kind of in Puerto Rico or somewhere like that. It wasn't in the United States, but he got halfway, and he fell. It was on TV. Everybody saw it. It was on TV. Later on, he did an interview with his wife. And they asked her, what happened? You know, he's been so great. And she said this. He started thinking about, what if I fall instead of walking? You see what I'm saying? You know, that's what his mind was on. What if I fall? That consumed him instead of just walking. Listen, there's a lot of people going through stuff, right? I mean, a lot of people going through stuff. And I know for me to tell you, just keep walking and trusting in the Lord, that's, you could say that's easy, right? Your life is not falling apart. But that doesn't mean what I'm saying is not true. I mean, that's all we can do, right? We don't need to focus on falling. We need to focus on walking. Walking toward Jesus. That's the Christian life. It really is. This is the difference between Christianity and religion. If all this is, guys, is just a place where we can come to and try to be entertained and be there for each other, listen, you don't have to have Jesus to do that, do you? But I'm telling you, you got to have Jesus when your world starts falling apart. You got to have him, Jesus. He will catch you. All you got to do, stretch out, stay really still, and wait on the Lord, and he will catch you. Does that make sense? Let's pray.